Welcome to How to Become a Production SQL Database Administrator. My name is Raphael. In this tutorial now, I'm going to illustrate to you how do DBAs migrate data from one database to another, either through a wizard or through a job. And in this particular example, I'm going to show you how to do it through a wizard. A couple of things I want you to point out before I even start. If you look at here, we're in the VirtualBox Manager, and this Windows OS was the domain, and this was the server. And as you can see at this point, they're powered off. It's critical to know that when you're working with the SQL Server 1 here, this is obviously powered off. Make sure that the Windows operating system is powered on also. Since this is a domain and this is part of a domain, this registers all of its properties. So if this is inactive or inoperable or not powered on, then this will not power on. So make sure you do that. So let's make sure we click on this and go Start. And let's see, make sure the Windows operating system with the domain controller is always on. So let's just do that right now. And it's restoring. So that's one thing I wanted to point out. So we understand if you have any problems, you'll free. So as you can see now, this is active. And there we go. Now we can minimize this. And now click on the SQL or the server with the SQL server on it. And let's power it up. And from here, I'm going to illustrate to you how you can migrate data from one database to another. And this is one of the tasks that you will be doing. Most likely these tasks are done by what I call SSI packages, and I'll be illustrating a couple of other things in a few examples, and then we'll wrap it up. So hopefully this will give you an idea of what to expect when and if you want to get into this kind of a career or this kind of learning. So let me start this server 1 and we'll continue. So as I said, that's why it's important to make sure that the Windows domain server is always on. Otherwise, you're going to get an error. So if you see an error and you can't log on, that could be one of the reasons. So while this is applying, let's look at it, and I'll show you in a second. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to work with the AdventureWorks 2014 database. And there's various tables in there. I'm going to show you how to migrate whatever table we select from one source to a destination. Now, the destination can be an existing database or an SQL database. It can be a different kind of a database, what's called a heterogeneous database, such as an Oracle or Access or other database. Or you can migrate data to send the data to an Excel file or a CSV file. So I'll show you that in a second. So let's get logged on first, and remember we're on this. Remember our password, and there we go. And so the first thing we need to do obviously is log on to the SQL server. So double click this, and let's start with 2014. Now, this is something you will be doing on a frequent basis, but most likely anything you do on a frequent basis, you want to try to automate. And all the courses that I'll be discussing in the upcoming videos will illustrate that point, how to automate and make up what's called jobs. So let's connect to our database here, and let's see what we can do. So here is the database here that we've been working for, AdventureWorks 2014. And if I expand this and expand the tables, these, as you know, are the tables that we can work with. So let's look at this now. As you can see, the only user-defined database that I have is called AdventureWorks 2014. So what I'm going to do right now is actually create another database so we can send some of the data from here, the source, to the destination. So I'm just going to quickly right-click, Database, and I'm just going to call this dev, and then just go, and I'll accept all these defaults, but I do explain these in the upcoming videos with the full course. So here it is. Now if I expand the table, you'll see that I don't have any tables populated yet. So what I want to do now is take a few tables from the AdventureWorks 2014 and migrate them here. So how can I do that? And the easiest way to doing it is use the wizard. So right click, tasks, export. So we're going to be exporting data from the source, and this wizard will pop up. Go next, and the first thing we want to do is connect to the data source. And what we want to do, obviously, there's different sources, as you can see. There's flat file, access, Excel, and so on. What we want to do is scroll down, select native, and the population, the server name will be populated along with the database source. Go next. Now, where's the destination? The destination is same SQL server. And in this particular case, what I want to do actually is go right-click here, Properties. What I want to do is look at the server name and copy-paste it there. The reason is it'll be easier to connect to. Once I do that, I can do the drop-down list for all the databases that exist and select Dev. So now this is the destination database. So I'm going to go next. Now here it allows you to copy data from one table to another, or actually you can write a query if you want. If I did that, this would be where I would insert the query or the SQL query where I want, which would be the select statement. In this particular case, I'm actually going to copy data from one source to another. So I'm going to go next. Here you'll notice that this is the source, and these are all the tables that are related with these AdventureWorks 2012. Now here, just by selecting the checkbox, I can select the various tables that I want to import. So let's say look at all the employees, human resources, let's say. And that's it. And as you can see, these are the destination. If I click on Edit Mapping, that will pop up, and that's just giving you information about each individual table and its data types. Now we can go over that later. You can preview it, but that's okay. Now that we've got this selected, of course, you can select whatever table you want. So these are the tables that we want to migrate from the source to the destination. If I go next, and we want to run it immediately, you can save it as an SSI package, but we'll talk about that later. And go next and finish. And this will give you a summary of what's about to be done. As soon as you press finish, you'll see this. Now, there's not very much data here, so it should just take a few seconds. As you can see, it's done and it's successful. If we close that and go to our dev database and go to tables, and if I refresh it with this button here, or F5, you can see that all the human resources tables have been migrated from the source to the destination. And you can even push this to a CSV file if you wish. So let's quickly look at that. If we wanted to push one of these to a CSV file or an Excel sheet, we can even do that. So since I don't have Excel populated in here, I'm going to push it to a CSV file. So the process is the same. I'm going to export the data from the source database. And the hardest part about this is just selecting, make sure you select the appropriate data source. So in this case, it's SQL. And that's the dev database, which I want the source information from. And now I'm going to go to the destination. So in this case, I want a CSV file, also known as flat file destination. As soon as you do that, it's going to ask me where I want to dump it. So I'm going to go browse, and I'm going to go to my C drive. We'll just call it here test, and go open, and that's it. And obviously, as you can see, if the columns have names, leave this checked. And we'll go next, 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 and next, and then just finish. And that's 16 transfers. So if I close this now, and if I go to my C drive, which is this folder here, and go to C drive, you can see that I've got that data in a text file, and there we go. So that's one of the easiest way of doing this. And as I said, now I'm doing this in what's obviously referred to as manually, meaning physically I'm doing it. But in a real production environment, if you have migration of data from source to destination, you use what's called jobs. And I'll be illustrating that in the videos that we have for these courses. So that's something I wanted to point out. So the next example I'm going to show you is, well, all this data is wonderful. And so all this data, it's important to know that all this data that we have here at this moment is just raw data. It's useless information at this until we kind of configure it, design it, and deploy it to the end user or the upper management where they can make decisions upon it. When they start making decisions upon this data, then it becomes information. And that's what we're trying to do. Translate this raw data into information that's usable by users, the end user, or the upper management. And then this is the becomes. Now, how do you do that? One of the ways you can do that, of course, is utilization of reports. So in the next demonstration, I'm going to show you how we actually utilize what's called SSRS, or reporting services, where we push this data to a report, and then the end user or the upper management can view that data. So I'll start with that one here. So I think I'll leave this here. This was just an illustration of how to migrate data from one point to another, and there's other ways to doing it. So I'll leave it here and we'll continue with the next video. So my name is Raphael, and this is how to become a production SQL database administrator. See you in the next video.